Hello and hi everybody. It's so great to be here, and I had the privilege of working with Multnomah County on what they're calling Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 of their bond projects. But we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of the Chapter 1 projects. First, Midland Library that completed a couple years ago. This was a whole building project that went through our program. It had some wonderful features. It had the efficient lighting, and you can see that in the picture. They did some really fun things with this upgrade that I think really enhanced the space with these beautiful fixtures. They upgraded the mechanical system with really efficient electric systems, and they participated early with us. And that's one thing that I think they're going to be talking about today, is that early engagement allows them to maximize the whole suite of incentives that they can benefit through Energy Trust, from early design assistance all the way through that technical assistance through that installation. We were able to offer them some really nice incentives, and they're going to maximize that all the way through their annual cost savings. And then the next one was actually the first one that completed, and it's their operations center. And I think they're going to talk a little bit more about why this one was the first to complete. But it had a really important daylighting feature that is really evident throughout the space. It had really efficient mechanical systems and heat pump water heating, which was really cool to see. An expansive solar array that you can see in this picture that was really impressive, as well as that early engagement I mentioned earlier that allowed them early design assistance, technical assistance for energy modeling, as well as energy metering that allows them to monitor how the building's performing. And then this building participated in our Path to Net Zero offering, and they're looking to go all the way to net zero, and we're helping them with the net zero certification as well. So they are able to tap into some nice incentives, but again, I think the wonderful story is just that annual savings that they're going to have compounded year after year.
Amazing. Ooh.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Well, Ellen and I, if you want to reach out and learn anything more about Energy Trust new buildings or any of the net zero fellowship or internship there, my name is Kriya Caping. You can reach out to me. But I'm probably like the rest of the people listening right now, I want to get on to this presentation. So we have quite the list of experts that are going to be sharing with us. We have Kate Vance with Multnomah. We have Jenny Lai with Bora Architecture, Brian Butler with Eris Consulting, and Jenny Stribe with Samata Consulting Engineers. So let me hand this over. I want to hear about all of the details. I'm sure you do as well. So we'll switch over, and Kate, give you the presentation controls, and yeah, tell us more. Perfect. We can see it now.
You can see it and you can hear me. Oh, wonderful. So, hello everyone. My name is Kate Vance. I use she, her pronouns, and thank you for coming to our presentation, Designing Libraries for the Next Century, Multnomah County Libraries bond-funded projects, bond-funded transformations, excuse me. Today, we will be talking about, well, we just did some introductions, but we'll do a brief touch on those again. We'll just touch on some learning objectives so you'll know what to expect for today. I'll give you an overview of the overall bond program, why and how it's needed, and what we've done, and then really getting into the design, focusing on our approaches to sustainability, our energy performance, mass timber, biophilic design, and some of the unique challenges that we've had or considerations that we've had with our historic aspects of those projects. Here we all are again. These amazing people have worked on several of our library projects and are well suited to talk about our overall portfolio of projects. So for our learning objectives, we want you to be able to apply an integrated sustainable design approach, combining biophilic design, daylighting, envelope strategies to optimize energy performance, reduce infrastructure demands, and enhance patron experience while supporting long-term resiliency. Identify how energy modeling, envelope optimization, resiliency strategies can be applied to public library projects to improve efficiency, sustainability, and adaptability. Examine methods for overcoming unique design and construction challenges, including mass timber system integration, historic building upgrades, and severe weather preparedness. And evaluate lessons learned from Multnomah County's $450 million library bond program as a model for planning and designing forward-looking public libraries. So I'll give you a bit of a background of the library bond program. So our fun little book logo shows you the location of our 19 library branch locations. And you can see we are all over the county, and also you can see how light we are on East County. Just pointing that out while we get in there. Multnomah County libraries are the 4th busiest in the nation, but rank 102nd in square footage. What this looks like is more than 47,000 checkouts, streams, or renewals each day, over 1,000 story times each year, more than 100 summer reading participants, 4,000 annual programs in 6 different service languages, 3.6 million computer and Wi-Fi sessions, and so much more. As a system, Multnomah County Library offers far less space to its community than neighboring communities and similarly sized cities in the U.S. At best, MCL has 50% of the square footage of our peer libraries. Locally, people in Multnomah County have less public library space per person than Tigard, Corvallis, Eugene, Hillsborough, and others. One of the metrics that we like to use is that prior to the bond program, all of MCL's square footage could fit inside Seattle's Central Library. Prior to the bond program, the entirety of Multnomah County libraries could fit inside the Central Library. 70% of meeting requests were denied at many popular locations due to lack of space and availability. 40% of the county lived east of I-205 but had only 24% of our space, of library space. Previously, Multnomah County Library had only 2 spaces across the entire county that could hold 100 people, which severely limits public use of spaces. Kids, families, and caregivers regularly returned away from story times due to lack of space. And before our automated materials handling systems, materials were sorted by hand, and staff touched an item 7 times if it stayed in the building, and 15 times if it went to a different location. With the efficiency of our automated materials handling, those numbers are cut by more than half, from 3 and 7 times respectively. Voters passed the Library Capital Bond Program in November of 2020. Multnomah County Library is expanding several libraries and building a new large library in East County for the community. And we built an operations center, which is the beating heart of our library system that houses materials handling, sorting, distribution, and outreach services. We also give a little bit of love to all the other branches with a light touch upgrades focused on lowering shelf heights to improve sightlines and updated finishes like paint, carpet, and new furniture. Since the beginning of these library projects, the entire bond team has really taken sustainability work to heart, knowing that we are working on the greatest transformation the library has seen in over 100 years. We know that our communities love their libraries. At the center of this is knowing that these libraries need to be sustainable for the community for the next 100 years. And that's a tall order, but the entire team has been up to the challenge, listening to community members and staff members about what will make people feel welcome and represented in these new libraries. We've heard extensively that building sustainable libraries is one of the most important aspects of the wider community. And we've heard that, and we're answering to that on a massive scale. Multnomah County prioritizes sustainability and has a number of policies in place to ensure major renovations and new construction are sustainably built. Our projects adhere to the policy for high performance green buildings, clean air construction standards, executive rules on energy conservation, dark sky policies, and many other environmentally friendly practices. Some of the ways this is showing up on our projects is we're spending more than $4.7 million on green energy technology. 7 of our projects are on target to achieve or have achieved LEED Gold, 1 LEED Silver, and 1 LEED Platinum, which is the highest level of efficiency awarded as part of the LEED certification. We have fossil fuel-free mechanical upgrades. Day 1, we'll have 33 electric vehicle charging plugs open on opening day with the capacity to add 45 more. And we have solar panels at the Operations Center, Holgate Library, Albina Library, and East County Library. And as Ellen mentioned earlier, our Operations Center is designed to be energy net zero. So the bond program has faced a number of challenges. First of all, the program kicked off during the pandemic. You guys remember that, right? The bond planning was all done pre-pandemic. So we faced an unprecedented escalation, market volatility. There were some significant supply chain disruptions and global events that impacted our projects, including port shutdowns, low water levels at the Panama Canal, wars in Eastern Europe. In addition, our program was the first in the region to apply the Regional Workforce Equity Agreement, or RWEA, which is a project labor agreement at a regional level. And we've seen really great numbers in our participation, and it was really challenging to work through all of those issues in implementing a brand new regional approach. When the bond sold in January of 2021, conditions were relatively favorable for us, and the program was able to gain $50.7 million in premiums, basically free money, which was a pressure relief on some of the market volatility. However, it required us to spend 85% of our tax-exempt bonds in 3 years, which compressed our overall timeline approximately 2 years. We had to quickly resequence the work and tighten schedules. Finally, we have different project types. We have historic renovations, new construction on existing sites, new construction on new sites, additions, small, medium, and large branches with different amenities, and the desire to have each branch reflect its own community. The library itself was going through some organizational changes, and the bond program had to force some decisions on standards and needs that ended up needing to be course corrected further down the road. So here's a preface of some of our open libraries. Here we have the Operations Center. And our Chapter 1 projects, because we like to be cute, as Ellen mentioned. We have North Portland, Albina, Midland, and Holgate. Those are all open right now. And then coming up is our projects that'll open in 2026. We have our East County Library. We have Belmont, Northwest, and St. John's.
Kate, the slides are stuck.
Oh, thank you. There's North Portland, Albina, Midland, Holgate. Thank you, Jeannie. ECL, East County Library, Belmont, Northwest, and St. John's. And just a moment about community engagement. So robust and authentic community engagement forms a cornerstone of our program with a primary focus during the design phase. We employed diverse tools and processes to deeply engage the community, including open public meetings with interactive information sharing and design feedback activities, tabling at existing community events like farmers markets, and implementing paid longer-term engagement programs with multiple sessions requiring participant applications. We also conducted paid focus groups for in-depth feedback, one-on-one interviews with community members, and public surveys. Each project team received thousands of comments from these engagement activities, and which were all meticulously reviewed, themed by the architects to inform design decisions. We achieved approximately 23,000 public touch points. We hired a community engagement liaison to ensure programmatic consistency and effective integration to community feedback into design. Additionally, we provided tours to our long-term community advocates through construction, and we're in the process of conducting follow-up post-opening surveys to demonstrate the tangible impact of the feedback from the community within our completed buildings. Our broader community demonstrates a strong commitment to these sustainable building practices. Overall, our community feedback significantly influenced various aspects of our new libraries, including art reflecting diverse cultures, expansive play and learning areas for children, dedicated team rooms for technology, homework, creative expression, new and expanded meeting and gathering spaces, and seamless indoor-outdoor space connections. All right, with that, I will turn it over to Jeannie.
Yes, thanks, Kate. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeannie Lai. I'm with 4 Architects. So, a librarian once told me the only constant in libraries is change. And that idea really has stuck with me because embracing change, really needs to be the core design principle and creating libraries that grow and evolve with their communities. That's really important. Next, please. So I thought we could kind of look at how libraries have changed as an overview. Early libraries are all about books, serving scholars and elite in the beginning. Many of them were membership based and people paid to borrow books. But, it wasn't until about the 18th century, the idea of a public library really began to take hold and eventually transform into the community funded institutions that we know today. Next. Then came modern technology, as we all know, which completely expanded what knowledge means and what the library was like in a building. So libraries began offering access to computers, the internet, digital media, alongside books. And the focus really shifted from just storing and preserving knowledge in books to providing access. And that had a huge impact on the library building itself, electricity, just, all the power needs that this meant. And then next, please. And then today, the library has evolved again into something uniquely powerful about sharing community space that's free and open to everyone. It's not just about books or even technology anymore. It's really about that physical space. Libraries have become true community anchors, and it's about connection and belonging as much as it is about knowledge and information. Next. This constant evolution, this ability of libraries and the way that the building needs to support the ways that libraries adapt was really central to how we approach designing sustainable libraries for the future. In many ways, I think sustainability has also gone through a transformation in the way that we've approached it. So next slide. In the early days, I think many of you will remember, sustainability often meant adding on features, solar panels, green roofs, or louvers. And with LEED coming on board, it often the conversation became about earning points. It was all about the points for a little while in that regard. And as it evolved next, in the last few years also, it continued to be about features. It had cost impacts, so it was about trade-offs and costs. But I think in the last few years that we've really started to see how all the firms, all the engineers, and even owners are approaching that mindset is changing. Next, please. And with this bond, as Kate mentioned earlier, sustainability was at the top of the agenda, really kind of in addition to expanding the much needed library space. So the PMO also challenged all of the design teams to rethink how we approach sustainability. We need to move beyond the checklist and the add-ons towards a more holistic approach. And so, you know, they were able to set up the bond in which the team were really able to work collectively together right from the beginning, and to really serve that core mission of modern libraries about bringing together people and communities. Next, please. It meant practicing sustainability as a more integrated, emergent, and inherent practice, not as an overlay, but a mindset that really shaped every decision from the beginning, from the start of the project. And we took that challenge. You know, for Bora, each project, the ones that we worked on were Holgate, Midland, Belmont, and St. John's, really began with these three core values: climate, health, and equity. Values that really center people's well-being and resilience. Next. So I thought the next part we could kind of share a little bit through using, you know, Holgate as a case study, which was the first project out of the bond, as an example, and kind of walk through the process that this team, Jenny and Brian and Kate, we were on the, you know, on this project. So we were kind of able to share that process with you guys. So Holgate Library, just a little bit background, like I said, was the first project to be completed in the bond. Replacing an original 6,000 square foot building on the site with a much bigger 21,000 square foot all new construction building. We did early benchmarkings and really set clear and ambitious targets, as you can see, on energy performance and EUI. So I'll walk through some of the sort of the process that we all went through for this project. Next slide, please. We began with a sustainability charrette that brought everybody on the team together, from MCL, the bond team, to MCL librarians and facility staff all together. And this is where the ETO also came into play to support us. And bringing everybody together really was a great way to kind of start, so that we've got a good foundation together. Next page. But rather than some, you know, traditional ways of doing sustainability charrettes, we didn't start with a checklist or metrics. We started with aligning values and goals for the projects. So in this case, we centered the conversation around daylight, resilience, carbon, and site ecology. Next slide. Then we translated these goals into more specific overarching goals with some technical sort of details built into it. Next, please. So that was sort of the summary from the charrette process. And then Bora, working with our engineering teams, kind of really sat down and set some real, very specific technical targets, so that this was something that we can all use together to measure, you know, the process and the outcomes for the project. And we use that from the very beginning, you know, even in site planning. So we explored the site where the building, the 21,000 square foot building, could go on the site in various ways, as you can see here. And next page. And very quickly, because we had some of those understanding of our aligned goals and also the metrics, we did analysis early on and was really able to quickly understand that option C in this case was really the best way that help us achieve our ambitious goals. And that was mainly because the orientation of the building, right? Having a long north and south facade really helped us to minimize the energy gains on the west and the east side. But that's not always possible, because there are some sites that, you just don't have that option. I think for Holgate, we were lucky to be able to kind of model that early and be able to determine that early. So, we extended that sort of design, this idea, further, in that we minimized very much the windows on the east and the west facade. So, just to lower that unwanted heat gain and loss on the building. And so that really helped us improve our energy and performance, and also sizing of the mechanical units as well. Next slide. On the north and south facade, we kept windows under 30% of the wall area, but still maximized views. We combined with vigorous kind of energy modeling, envelope modeling, and we were able to achieve that target of 18.4 with all of those strategies together. Next slide. For daylighting, our goal was also really pretty simple. It was to bring natural daylight into every regular occupied space. And so we know that we had a pretty deep footprint. So we set off pretty early in the beginning of the project, thinking about how to bring some daylight into the middle. And again, we, worked with our engineering team, ETO, and kind of did a lot of analysis around this as well. And we were able to quickly figure out that, a skylight scenario was really the way that we can achieve that quickly. You're doing great. Thanks, Kate. Yeah, next slide. And so you can kind of see on the next slide the results. The skylight really brings light down all the way to the lobby that's on the ground floor. There's some seating as well in the lobby. We called it the sort of welcome desk area. Yeah, so in summary, this team really took on this innovative design approach to the overall project, and relied not only on metrics, we had metrics that backed us up, but we really relied on the values very early on to make sure that we were bringing real outcomes that impact the people and communities. So start with value alignment, agree on project outcomes together, and then set clear performance goals for the project. Work with ETO on all of those. We have found that early systems integration between structure and mechanical especially is really important early on in the concept of the overall design. And then it was a lot of collaborative design sessions amongst the team, just to get all of the different aspects and perspectives kind of baked into the massing and those early kind of design considerations. And then the PMO set us up really well, where the GC was on board very early in the design so they could give us feedback throughout. And then the GC was able to bring on the MEP subcontractors as well, so sort of deepen once we got into the systems more directly. Next slide. So for us, we thought for this group, we wanted to kind of frame 4 key themes, through lines on the projects that across the bond, and we're going to kind of popcorn a little bit and kind of share each of our perspective. So we're going to cover energy performance, mass timber, biophilic design, and some of those challenges of dealing with historical renovations as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian with energy performance.
Yeah, thanks, Jeannie. Yeah, so like Jeannie mentioned, at the beginning of each project, we started looking at benchmarking, setting our targets, setting our goals for energy reduction. And so here you can see those benchmarks along with where we ended up on each of the library projects. So we're very excited, of course, that we met our targets or were below those in all those cases. But not only looking at EUI or operational energy on the right there, we also wanted to look at the bigger picture. So embodied carbon, looking at the total greenhouse gas emissions for the entire life cycle of all the materials going into these buildings. And so really looking at that more holistic approach of how to combat climate change and like I said, look at the bigger picture. One of the projects here that I think is really interesting is the operations center that I think Kate mentioned earlier. Not only it's an adaptive reuse project, it's an old Safeway grocery store, that was converted into the new operations center. It's got a very low embodied carbon, as you can see there, because of all the reuse. And like Kate mentioned, we're also at net zero, or actually a little better. So definitely one of the exciting projects of that group. Next slide, please. So as we're in those early stages of setting energy reduction goals, we broke down, a typical library's energy end uses, as you can see here, and said, okay, what's the most bang for our buck? Where can we really reduce energy use as much as possible? HVAC, like you would think, heating and cooling, of course, interior lighting. You can see those were some of the biggest slices of the pie, so to speak. Fans, which really ties into HVAC, of course. So those were the areas that we targeted. Next slide. Another consideration, a really important consideration, we're creating climate shelters with these libraries. You can see here some of the statistics from 2021. And very sadly, when we had that heat dome, extreme heat event, just some of the statistics there from illnesses and deaths, unfortunately. And so thinking about these libraries as climate shelters, places where people can go to get warm or stay cool in AC on really, really hot days. A lot of folks still don't have AC. And so these are really invaluable places for them to go to help survive those type of conditions. And as we're seeing, these extreme heat events are only getting more prolonged and more intense too. So that was really a critical consideration. Next slide. So as we thought through those specific MEP needs for libraries, like I said, providing climate shelters, so looking at using heat pumps, VRF systems, and dedicated outdoor air systems, so we could provide heating and cooling at a very efficient level. Libraries typically, of course, have very large open spaces, so radiant floors were a great fit for those. Displacement ventilation is as well, so in large open reading areas, it's great for a high level of indoor air quality and also for acoustics, really keeping those sound levels low. And then finally, just the lighting and daylighting approach that I think Jeannie touched on already for the reading areas, making sure there's ample light while also being very energy efficient. Next slide. So the first, the main system type that we landed on really as a consistent one throughout most of these library projects was a VRF system. It's fossil fuel free. That was one of our major goals, to electrify, decarbonize, and make sure whichever system we landed on avoided fossil fuels. Heat pumps are a great strategy. So VRF, or variable refrigerant flow, those are heat pumps that can move heat around the building, and you can kind of see there in the diagram, different spaces can get heating or cooling at different times. And that system has a heat recovery capability to be able to move that heat from one zone to the other. The DOAS system, dedicated outdoor air system, so that's 100% outside air, serving the building with ventilation air, and then also providing exhaust for spaces like restrooms, and then using an energy recovery wheel to recover that energy or that heat between those two airstreams. Next slide. Another, I mentioned radiant floors, and you can kind of see, a little tough to read on the left there, but zoomed way out, all the radiant tubing loops in the floor slab. So each color is a different PEX loop or plastic piping loop. And so on the right, you can see with the VRF system, we're able to use a refrigerant to water heat exchanger and heat and cool that water that's then circulated through those floor slabs to heat and cool the space. So very energy efficient, very, very comfortable spaces, and a great fit for large open areas. Next slide, please. Displacement ventilation, also very important. So bringing fresh air in low to a space, and then that displaces the warmer air up and out of the space. It's it's part of our strategy to decouple the ventilation system from the space heating and cooling. but also provides a higher level of indoor air quality. You can kind of see on the left there, the traditional mixing system just kind of turns up all the air, all the germs, everybody's breathing the same air from everyone else, versus displacement, where that air then kind of creates an upward column and is exhausted out of the space. It's also very quiet. So a library, of course, we need to keep it quiet. We don't want too much background noise from an HVAC system. And so displacement really was a great fit from that standpoint too. Next slide. And then finally, kind of walking through that energy reduction process. So we started with our baseline on the left there and kind of stepped our way down through the design process. You can see the Oregon Energy Code EUI, and then our proposed building, all the envelope strategies, the MEP energy efficiency strategies got us down to an EUI of 31. And then by adding roof-mounted PV, that got us even lower. So a 58% reduction below energy code down to 17.1. And that was even better than our architecture 2030 target there that you see on the right. So yeah, very excited that we hit that and even exceeded our goal in that case. Next slide. I think.
Yeah, so we're just going to pivot here just a little bit. We've talked a little bit about the Operations Center and how proud we are of it, and that it's we've used a lot of smart strategies to balance good energy saving strategies, and now we're going to kind of flip the script a little bit as we start talking about clean and renewable energy generation. So with that, I will turn it over to Jenny.
Hi, everyone. Yes, as Brian mentioned, in addition to the energy reduction strategies we were considering for all the projects, we knew that renewable energy integration was going to be a key strategy for us to meet the sustainability goals of the bond. So we had kind of a unique opportunity with the county doing a number of projects kind of in a row. We were able to look across all of the facilities and really optimize where we integrated the solar arrays to maximize the production that we were going to be getting from these systems while also kind of balancing the budgets. There were projects that were fully new construction. Those made more sense in a lot of instances to include larger arrays. Obviously here the Operations Center was the largest array, given that it was included for the path to net zero. We were able to include ETO on discussions early on too when we were evaluating massing for new buildings and just really see orientation and all of that. Where were the places where we wanted to invest the bond's money to get the most bang for the buck across kind of all the chapters of projects with our solar production. ECL also worth mentioning included, yeah, you're good on moving slide forward, also included battery energy storage systems. So that was another way they really enhanced including that renewable energy technology on the project. In addition to meeting the sustainability goals for the bond, we really wanted to look at the resiliency goals for the bond across all the projects as well. Like Brian mentioned, looking at them as places for people to go when there's this extreme heat event, just recognizing that it's this community asset that we want people to be able to go to in times of crisis to charge phones, be with other community members. And so we had to see though what made the most sense for each branch given the various types of projects each of them were. So for that we explored a number of different strategies, and East County Library being the most robust with the battery energy storage included, but we also looked at for other sites, Holgate, Albina, and having the temporary generator docking stations so that we could have that support infrastructure there to support future permanent generators or even temporary generators to allow on-site energy production in outage situations. Next
Thanks,
slide.
Jenny. I just wanted to jump in that on the ECL, creating that microgrid with the battery energy storage system, that was not part of our original scope, but because of grant opportunities, we were able to incorporate it. And so it's been one of the success stories that I think a lot of us are really proud of.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So we looked at, as several people have mentioned, that a strategy that we employed was managing our percent for art funds and our green energy technology levels at that portfolio level. And this really allowed us to get that maximum benefit for those dollars. For example, we were able to consolidate our GET dollars, our green energy technology dollars, at these 4 locations for solar. And then we were able to put art dollars more at public spaces so that the community could enjoy those more. And again, we looked at the sites that were best suited for solar and with the right orientations, buildings with flat roofs, appropriate seismic, not covered by trees or other foliage. And then we also really balanced our programmatic needs with our desire to build more resilient structures. So that temporary generator ports are prime examples of how programmatically the library doesn't really need generators, but also being cognizant of our role in the community and how these structures could be used in emergency situations. A lesson learned on the photovoltaic front, it's important to ensure you have good monitoring set up in a way that your agency or organization can really monitor it and check that early. We've had some challenges with inverters not being connected to our IT system to monitor individual production. So we're doing some course correcting there. We've also had coordination problems with our PV system and fall protection on several buildings. We really want to protect our workers when they're up on those roofs and making sure that they're safe. And there just needs to be a little bit more care, since both the PV system and the fall protection systems can be a little bit more design build. So making sure that those are well coordinated is a key lesson learned. All right, and with that, I'll turn it back to Jeannie.
Yes, thanks, Kate. Next slide. Yeah, so mass timber was another major sort of through line, a shared commitment embraced across the bond project. You can see all the ones that are listed that are mass timber. Next slide. One of the key things that I think is pretty obvious, but for a library, books are still a major part of the consideration, and especially in structure. So books are heavy, right? And so this kind of really influenced how we approach a mass timber structure. And for Bora, we've done mass timber structure prior to the bond projects, the libraries, but we hadn't actually considered that. So it was kind of fun for us to really think about what that meant at Holgate, the first project we worked on with mass timber. So next slide. And I think, the benefits of mass timber are I think probably the audience are pretty familiar, right? Reducing embodied carbon, that biophilic benefits when you expose all of that, as much as that as possible. The flexibility and layout with a pretty regular grid structure. And then, for us in this region, also supports regional economy, and it definitely has, all of the studies to kind of what impact does it have on construction time, and then also cleaner and quieter job sites. Many of these libraries are like in neighborhoods, the house is like right next door to the library. So that was actually a really important consideration. And it was, each team definitely responded in its own way, and depending on the size of the library and how the collection wanted to be laid out. But I think all in all, it really kind of shaped, and it's really fun to see each of the library and how they've kind of developed their mass timber structure, and they're all a little bit unique, which was one of the goals for the bond too, is that all of the libraries has a unique character to it. Next slide. Just want to, share again how important it is, especially with the mass timber structure, to have early trade partners. So we were lucky to have Swingerton as part of the Holgate project construction team, and working with them really early on to think about sort of the fabrication and all of that pretty early on to develop the whole grid of the structure, and then also teaming with, Brian and his team really early to think about structure where everything is going to work together. I'm going to pass it off to Brian actually to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you really can't start coordinating that stuff early enough in these projects. And so, obviously we want to the focus to be on the CLT. It's beautiful. You want to expose it. No one wants a bunch of ductwork running in front of it. So, yeah, you really just couldn't start coordinating that early enough in the project. And so that's what was really great with having the contractors on board early. We could really think through those MEP pathways, IT pathways, sprinkler pipe routing, trying to create, whether it's notches in the structure or pathways with lower or shallower structure for that routing, and then keeping the bigger spaces open. Kind of, you can see in that roof framing plan there on the left, utilizing the core for more MEP routing and really enhancing and putting the focus on the CLT. And that really helped too with some of the strategies like radiant floor slabs, which of course are, that's water tubing, embedded in the concrete floors. And so you could really keep a lot of the traditional ductwork and HVAC equipment out of those spaces. Next slide. And then this is just a great diagram of how, a typical CLT structure comes together. And so you can see the topping slab there. On the left are some of the photos in process. So the PEX tubing that's used for the radiant floor slabs, it's installed there, obviously encapped, and before the topping slab concrete pour. And so just really making sure that that's thoroughly coordinated. Like I said, it's starting as early in the process as possible. And it was really a key, just the mindset of getting the contractors on board early. It just, everybody pulling in the same direction from day one, I think is crucial. Next slide.
Thank you, Brian. So as Jeannie shared, there are a lot of great things about mass timber. It's beautiful, has that connection to nature, is very sustainable, and there were a lot of considerations that I wanted to hit on. So a lot of firms are not doing mass timber yet, right? It's a small group of a number because the startup costs are so high. I think we'll start to see more firms sprout up as this is a pretty fast growing industry. I mean, I think back to 10 years ago and code or, local code was still very skeptical of mass timber, and that's very different than what we're talking about now. But some of the things that we consider are, are they going to upcharge because of demand? Can you fit in with their availability? How do those costs compare to steel and concrete options? How do the limited firms available relate to the project labor agreements you may have? We had some real challenges initially on that front. We know that builders' risk is higher. Agencies also need to ensure that the material is resourced responsibly. And so the project team needs to really thoughtfully weigh all of these different factors to make sure the appropriate structural system is selected. And in our case, the best interest of taxpayer dollars. The other thing that I wanted to point out is I feel like I could do a whole presentation on the conversation with mass timber and roofing and how you're routing a lot more things up on the roof. And so do you want to bury those things into the roofing material? Do you want to put them above and have a lot more penetrations? So it's, I'm not sure that there's agreement, at least among my team, on what the best process is on that, but it would be an interesting conversation to have with folks.
I'm going to jump back in on biophilic design. So another through line that I think spanned many of the libraries, it was the connection to nature. And this one, I think, really came pretty early on from the community, through community engagement. Kate mentioned, a lot of the feedback that we got really early on. So, loud and clear from the, Pacific Northwest community, strong connection to outdoor. So more views, more access to outdoor spaces, opportunities to feel like you were connected in our great outdoors here. Next slide. You know, I think each of the teams, again, took this in its own different directions and ways, and got really inspired by this. And so this is Midland. Midland had the unique opportunity because it was adjacent to Midland Park. So that connection, our teams try to build that connection. Place was the landscape architect in this case. And so we not only provided outdoor seating and a big, large covered porch, but also play areas for the kids, which was adjacent to the children's library area. Then next slide. Yeah, and then this is Albina, which was designed by Lever and their team, and they were able to include this really lovely courtyard in the middle of the space and had kind of seating and great views from the community room as well. Next slide. So again, you know, so many ways, you know, from cover porches to green roofs and balconies, all of the ideas, and then including indoor plants. At Holgate, that I think this is one of the few where we built in physical permanent sort of planters and worked with the bond team and the MCL facilities team to bring real live plants into the space. Next slide. And then I think for some of the projects that we worked on, that connection to nature also was in the sort of equipment, including the interactive play areas in the children's library, and then the interior palette and materials, colors as well.
So this is an area that was really strongly desired by the community. We have lots of quotes on this about people wanting to feel grounded, connection to nature. They want to cozy up and read a book with having outside views. And so we heard that, and we really needed to make sure that the library policies and facilities could support that. And so really some considerations that we've learned as we've started to incorporate some of these things are, can you afford and do you have established contracts for indoor plant care? So one of the things we learned, none of our existing contracts with our landscapers had indoor plant care. So that was a challenge. And then is there potential for casework damage, or how do you address if there's overwatering? For some of those outdoor spaces, how do you make sure you have good security or monitoring of those spaces, especially when we're in budget constrained seasons and you have limited staffing or staffing who's busy doing a lot of other things that are really part of their main jobs. Something else that we can discuss, or that should be really thought about, is how could this impact egress paths? So one of the areas at Midland that we talk about is in that children's play area. We have that turf. It's part of our egress path, but it's hard to scrape it, right? If you have snow, because and then the ice melt, you don't want to damage the ice melt. And so we're just working through some of those things as you're considering your designs.
Again, I'll jump back into this. So you can kind of see a majority of the project involves some sort of renovation, different eras of libraries. Next slide. 4 out of this group were actually involving historic buildings. Historic register buildings for Albina, North Portland, and St. John's, and then Belmont was just a cute little historic building that the community really wanted to keep. Next slide. All these projects required a full seismic upgrade, which meant, everything was touched in the old building, complete system replacement, and a careful balance of, that was the big charge to the design team. Project teams were kind of like, how do you maintain the historic character, but bring that modern performance standards to play? Next slide. And I think, if any of you have worked on a renovation, you know this, like it is like unraveling a sweater, you know, which was Brian brought this up, right? Once you start, you just, it just, everything comes along with it, and you have to really kind of be aware throughout CA, but even early on, just understanding that that could happen. So that really touched on many of the projects that were historic renovations. I think Kate and her team had to react to many surprises. So, you know, again, this is a Albina library. Again, Lever led this design, but what I wanted to illustrate with some of these photos was that, you know, because of the energy performance envelope that their team was thinking about, the wall thickness actually became deeper than the original building, and so they had to, you know, think about how to frame the windows, how, you know, each of the detail, all of the trim, which had lots of little dentils and other details, had to be redone. So that was a lot of work, I think, in terms of thinking about, you know, sometimes we think, oh, let's keep all of those historic elements and design, but then you have to kind of basically redo everything. So it's a lot to think about. And I think, again, the contractor team was great to have on board to help think that through. You know, the other big consideration that we came across was the historic windows. So we studied a range of kind of what can we do with that? Do we replace it? Do we put film, low E film? Do we, you know, mount storm windows kind of to address that? So that was kind of considered and analyzed early on. Next slide. In the case of St. John's, what really, after doing that analysis, what made us realize was that, you know, because the window ratio was pretty small, it was like 17% of the historic building, you know, those things didn't really matter. So why, you know, spend the dollars on replacing all of the windows? We can just kind of clean them up. The contractor went, you know, cleaned them up and replacing them, but we just added window film to help that energy use a little bit, just to improve it a little bit. The other thing was daylighting. You know, again, we want these libraries to feel light. You know, patrons, especially from St. John's, mentioned how dark it was feeling in there. So we studied actually, we couldn't add any windows, right? So we studied what were the interior finishes that could help maybe make it feel brighter. And so we really leaned on sort of lighter color, paint colors, and instead of the dark wood, leaned on making that lighter. So things to think about, I think, in these renovations. I'm gonna pass it off to Jenny.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, really, as the libraries are a resource for everyone, those modern power needs were really significant. You have these large open areas full of stacks, and there's checkout stations, there's little pods for people to work on computers, and so finding creative ways of getting power to all those different locations. You know, there were a lot of creative solutions to do that. One Midland library actually had an existing underfloor or in-floor raceway system that it took some it was almost like a puzzle, but we figured out a way to have the new stack layout align so that we could reuse that as an opportunity. And then looking at the lighting systems too, you know, we want to increase our energy efficiency, and how can we integrate new LED technology fixtures but have it feel appropriate in the historic spaces. And so I think one way on a number of projects we address the lighting levels needed at the stacks was to have stack integrated lighting, and then finding other solutions for the ambient lighting, like in the image below, with some newer, more modern fixtures. But that kind of balance really worked out in a number of the historic renovations. And then another challenge on each of the projects with the renovations are most of the electrical rooms on the existing buildings were in the basement. That was kind of a standard way of putting the utility spaces where it wasn't competing with all of the, you know, program area for the patrons, and that no longer meets utility standards. So for most of these projects, I think almost all of them, we had to find a way to meet those requirements, which were, ground floor, at grade rooms, while still preserving, the experience from the users. They don't want to come into the building right next to an electrical room. So we found, some ways there, but that was a challenge for each of them, to meet those needs and still keep as much space for those community areas that are the priority. Next slide.
So here are some images. Let's see, we looked at some of these already, but here are some of the images from our open building. And then here, we really wanted to talk about, we were able to really employ these strategies to ensure the overall success of the program. So first of all, we created a program management office, or PMO, that pulled together county and library staff in a really unique way, forming a single functional team. So in our PMO, we choreograph the delivery of the portfolio of projects to ensure that we have shared resources that aren't overtaxed. We establish and maintain standards, processes, procedures for the delivery of those projects. We create a central office that is responsible for monitoring and reporting on the status of these projects and the overall program to key stakeholders. We ensure that critical decisions are made with appropriate information and timely manner to keep the projects on schedule and on budget. And we ensure that the library and county's values are really acted on consistently across all of these. So the other strategy that we employed was managing, as we referenced before, our art funds and our green energy technology funds at a portfolio level. This allowed us to get that maximum benefit for those dollars that we talked about before. We really relied heavily on community engagement. We really prioritized future adaptability, knowing that it might be another 100 years before we get to really revitalize the entire program again. And then just really reiterating a lot of the topics that we talked about before, right? We have this integrated designer approach. We brought on our contractors really early. We engaged ETO really early. We built sustainability into the design. We didn't just try to layer it on top. So with that, here's a place you can get some more resources. And on the library page, we do have newsletters if you're interested in finding your own branch and following along and seeing what's happening there. Or there's just other great resources on that site as well. So thank you.